coming up.
Do y'all hear that wind? It's pretty violent. Oh my goodness. We in Playa del Carmen now.
Subscribe, like, comment, and share.
Welcome to my channel, Sonia Unapologetic. My name is Sonia, or welcome back if you've been here before. So I'm going to jump straight into this conversation. It's somewhat of a story time, somewhat of a Sonia Unapologetic origin story. It's just talking about how the pandemonium just really turned my life upside down, or just, I don't know, just really changed my life. And I know that a lot of you can relate because we've been through a lot over this last 3 years. So because we're talking about the pandemonium, I am wearing a shirt. It is the Erykah Badu versus Jill Scott t-shirt. I don't know if a lot of you remember the verses that happened in May of 2020 that everyone was tuned into. And in addition to the t-shirt, I'm also wearing some earrings that have Jill Scott and Erykah Badu on the earrings. So, okay, let's get into this conversation. So when the pandemonium started, I had just started a new job. So I was in training, and I think it was like day 3 of training. Management came into the training room and they were just like, you guys are going to be working from home effective immediately. They didn't want to finish out the day. They were just like, effective immediately. You guys aren't going to stay the whole day. You're going home early. You're going to be working from home. And this was because the C-19 was upgraded from an epidemic to the pandemonium. This was just very scary for me. I remember a lot of my coworkers, they were excited. They were like, oh wow, I took this job. I didn't know it was gonna be work from home full time, cool. Like they were just so excited, but I was just thinking like, okay, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for our lives? Because this was a big campus. It was like 7 buildings. So if this company was shutting down the entire campus, it's like, okay, things are changing. So, and I knew it wasn't just gonna be our company. Things are gonna change for just a lot of aspects of our life. So I remember just being a little nervous, and then the next day we were training via Zoom. Zoom was not something that a lot of people were familiar with. I had used it before, but doing virtual on-the-job training, I had never done that before, and it was just weird and scary, and just my mind was just racing, just thinking like, okay, what is going on? In addition to just things with the job changing and having to do my training virtually like that, I remember seeing all of the shortages at the grocery store. I remember going to the grocery store and just really couldn't find things like meat. I remember having to buy hot dogs. I hadn't eaten hot dogs in probably years at that point, but I was just trying to find whatever I can find to put in a basket. It wasn't the stuff that I normally ate, but I was just like, the shelves were really bare. So I know y'all remember the whole toilet paper shortage. I mean, back in 2020, this was like currency. And oddly enough, before the pandemonium, I had bought like 30 rolls of like Bounty. I don't know why I had. I guess it was maybe on sale, but by that point, I was probably down to the last like maybe 5 rolls, and I had ran out of toilet paper. I'd ran out of toilet paper. I'd ran out of like Kleenex. The only thing I had was Bounty, and I could not find any toilet paper. I was going online, couldn't find anything online. Then I was going on like Target.com and finding like the stores in the area and saying, okay, what's in stock at my nearest Target? And then I would see like, okay, there's Angel Soft in stock. And then I would run to the store and then I would get there and it was out of stock. Finally, I went to Target one day and there was toilet paper on the shelves. I was so excited. I'm like, oh my goodness, I finally got some toilet paper. And then I got to the register and I didn't have my wallet. And I just remember just like, no, I'm just gonna have to leave without the toilet paper. Okay, where am I gonna find toilet paper again? So y'all, when I finally got down to my last roll of Bounty, I was scared. I was like, let me tear off like this. I was getting scared. I remember seeing posts online. One guy was like, y'all out there hoarding all the toilet paper, I'm gonna be wiping my ass with dryer sheets. And somebody posted in the comments, bounce that ass. But thankfully, I finally was able to find toilet paper online. I got like a box of like 24 rolls in the mail finally. It may have been 48 rolls, who knows. I just remember feeling all of the fear. I remember watching TV and seeing like the numbers, like this person has it. Now is, this many thousands of people, this many hundreds of thousands of people. It was just that fear out there. And then also seeing the way they were doing the C-19 tests, the way they were taking that huge cotton swab and it just felt like they were sticking that thing up to a person's brain. I remember being like so scared of taking the test, like, okay, I want to know if I have it or not, but that test just seemed so scary. And then I remember friends and family members, they started to say like, okay, I have it. And I remember just that scary feeling of like, what does that mean that my family member or my friend has it? Are they going to be okay? And I felt just so isolated because I couldn't go and see my friends. I couldn't go and see my family members. The ways that I tried to combat that feeling of loneliness was things like club quarantine, just all of these online DJs and like online clubs and just like the comedy online, the versus battles. And then after watching the versus battles, there were comedians who would make parodies of the versus battles. So Affion Crockett and Spice Adams, they would do the parodies. And that was stuff that really just kept me sane. Just listening to music, dancing in my living room, watching comedy online. That's the stuff that just really kept me sane. And then also doing Zoom meetings with my family, just like Zoom family reunions pretty much. We would get together and eat dinner or have like happy hour. It would be like all the cousins. Even my birthday party in 2020, I did my birthday party via Zoom. And that was just a lot of fun. One of my cousins was a DJ, so we had a DJ. Everybody's in their living room dancing. Everybody's on camera. We just had a really, really good time. It was really nice. It felt like for our family, it kind of brought us closer because especially some of my cousins who lived in different states and, the ones of us that did not live close to each other, it felt like we were communicating and seeing each other's faces more than we had in the past. I felt like that was the thing that kept my spirits high, just having that communication, having that virtual communication with family. So that's kind of got me through. Life had changed so much and I just really missed my old life. I miss going to the movies. I miss going to concerts. I miss going to stage plays, musicals, happy hours. I just missed all that stuff. And I miss going on trips. I remember talking to one of my friends and they said, we're not gonna ever have what we had in the past. Like when the normal life, that's over with. Like we have to get over that. This is the new normal. We're not gonna ever get that stuff back. Like movie theaters, that's done with. Like all this stuff, like that is all done with. This is our new normal. And I just remember like feeling like, okay, is this possible that we'll never get our old life back? Will this be what life is from now on? It was just, I don't know, that was just really depressing. So then I know a lot of you guys remember G. Floyd. I don't know what all we can say on YouTube and not, but you guys remember seeing G. Floyd. He was unalived on camera for just the whole world to see. And yeah, I remember watching that, and that of course was just very depressing. It was just like unbelievable seeing that, and that sparked protest. I remember watching a lot of the protests on TV, and it just felt like with 2020, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. All the difference of opinions, it seemed like everyone was fighting, everyone was outraged. It was just such a big divide. Things like a mask. There are people who wanted to wear masks. There are people who didn't want to wear masks. It was just everything, different political parties and whatever. It's like if one person felt one way, they're like, well, I want everybody else to feel this way as well. It was just lots of fighting, and it was just getting very, very depressing. So for me, I just started to reflect on life, and just, it really started to make me think about my mortality, especially because people were losing their lives. It really made me think about, okay, Sonia, what have you done with your life? And I was just trying to figure things out. It just felt like my thoughts were racing, and I just wanted to feel some type of guidance. Okay, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? I tried online dating again. It was, of course, very tough. I don't know why I tried online dating again, because I don't feel like online dating is for me. I had tried it in the past. I did 2 whole short films just inspired by my experiences with online dating. So not sure why I tried it again, but I did. The pandemonium really made online dating even harder. It made it an even more unique experience because of the way people were feeling about C-19. It really made it harder to date. Even some people's dating profiles, they're like, if you don't feel like this way about C-19, don't even click on me. We're not a match. You can just tell that a lot of people's profiles were just like very like angry and just very passionate in their profiles. It seemed like online dating was becoming more stressful than it was helpful. And I would say, I remember at one point, just during all of this, I just ran out of energy to fear. I don't know if any of you have felt that before, to where you just feel so fearful about something, and then you're just like, I don't have any more energy to fear. I got to that point. I didn't have energy to fear anymore. And at that point, I started to look into travel again. Like, what are my options to be as safe as possible, but to travel again? So I started doing research. I started joining online travel communities and just seeing what people were doing when it concerns travel during the pandemonium. So I started to get into these Black American travel groups. I started to see Black Americans moving to the continent of Africa. I watched a lot of YouTubers who were talking about their experience and just really letting us see the difference between their lives as Black Americans living on the continent as opposed to Black Americans living in the US. And especially with everything happening with the pandemonium and all the protests and everything, they were just showing how peaceful their life was. They talked about how they had fresh produce, how they had access to all of this good food and things that weren't processed. They were just showing the difference between their life and how at peace they were. So that's how it was at the beginning of the pandemonium, and a lot of the content that I was able to find with the Black American YouTubers on the continent. And it just really made me start to reflect on my life in the US. And I think just during the pandemonium as a Black American, it almost felt like because there was so much trauma being shown to us on TV and everything on social media, it's almost like everything bad that had happened in my life, it's almost like I was reliving it all just through watching horrible things happening to other Black Americans. And it felt like I was looking for just a place to where I can have some type of peace and just feel like I can just take a break from all of the hustle bustle and just all the anxiety. I just wanted a break from all of that. As I started to watch more videos, a lot of the Black Americans who had been on the continent for an amount of time, they started to open up about the culture shocks. Some of them started to talk about, depending on where you live on the continent, especially certain place in Ghana, it's not as cheap as what you thought. There's a lot of places in Ghana, Accra. I'm like, wait a minute, that's how much a house costs? That's how much an apartment's gonna cost? It's like, okay, I may as well live in New York City for those prices. So everywhere on the continent is not inexpensive. They were also dealing with going to certain markets to buy things, and they were being charged 4 and 5 times more than what a local would be charged. And so they were feeling heartbroken because they felt like, wait a minute, I thought that I was one of you guys and I'm being treated like I'm an other. Well, it's like, because you are an other. Some of the Black Americans were dealing with locals calling them the white person, and they're like, wait a minute, no, I'm one of you guys. I'm brown, I'm Black just like you. And they're like, no, you're American, you're white. There's one lady, I think she was either my complexion or maybe even darker. There was a video that she did, and she said every time she would go out to buy stuff, the kids were like, oh, mom, that's the white lady. And she's like looking like, where? And they were talking about her. And so I saw a few Black Americans who were saying because they were American, the locals were like, no, you're white. And so they felt heartbroken, like, I thought I was coming, quote, home, and I thought that I was gonna be accepted. You're from all the way across the world. So when you come here, just like anybody else from across the world, you're the other. And then also I saw Black Americans, because a lot of countries you go to, when you get there, if you're American, they automatically think that you're rich. It was a few Black American YouTubers to where all of their stuff was stolen, and they were just like in tears and like, I'm coming home because I have nothing, and now I have to come home and start all over. So I started to think, moving all the way across the world, being so far from home, is that the option for me? Is that a place for me in my life right now? Am I prepared for that? Am I equipped for that? It just started to seem a little bit more scary, especially because I wasn't moving with a partner. I would be going by myself. And so I started to think about that, because these couples and a lot of these people who were doing these YouTube videos, they were partners, they were couples, they were families. And for me to have to go by myself, it's so different from what I'm accustomed to. It's so far away. I just started to wonder, like, okay, am I biting off more than I can chew? Am I being a little bit too ambitious? I still want to visit some countries on the continent, but I was starting to think like, okay, this fairy tale that I was thinking about, oh, I'm gonna go there, it's just gonna be just, wonderful. And I now understood it was going to be a culture shock, just regardless, it was going to be a culture shock. And I didn't know if at that time in my life, if that was an undertaking that I was willing to do or equipped to do. But I knew I needed to make a decision. I wanted to take a sabbatical from corporate America and a sabbatical from the US because I felt like I needed to get away from the hustle and bustle. I needed to just be at a place of quiet because in the US, we were just dealing with everyone just fighting about everything, fighting about the mask, fighting about I think this way, you think that way. It's just like everything was an argument. Everyone was on edge. And so I just felt like I needed to get away, just kind of reflect on my life and think about how I want to move forward. I started to see 222 everywhere. I started to see 222. If I looked at the time, it was 222. If I was out and saw a license plate 222 was on it. If I ordered something, my order confirmation number was AB5222. It was just like 222 was everywhere. If I needed to go somewhere and I would see it was suite 222. It was everywhere. So I kind of took that as confirmation that I did need to take the sabbatical, and that it was confirmation that, okay, I will be okay taking the sabbatical. I started to hear about Tulum, Mexico. I heard about Tulum, Mexico even before the pandemonium, but during the pandemonium, I really started to research Tulum, Mexico. And I became familiar with a group called Black in Tulum. I saw them on Facebook. I joined the group. I started to communicate with the members of the group. And I met a handful of Black ladies. And we started to plan a trip to Tulum because none of us had been to Tulum. I had been to the area about 20 years prior. I took a cruise and I was in Cancun, Cozumel, Playa del Carmen, but I'd never been to Tulum. I was excited about going to Tulum. So I had a group chat with me and 5 other ladies. We were planning to go to Tulum in October of 2020. And I'm going to change names. Not that there's anything bad happened, but 2 of the ladies that I became really close to in the group chat, one was Shelby, that's not her real name, and the other was Tina. So we were excited about our trip to Tulum. We were in the group chat, and I remember me and Shelby messaging in the group chat, and I was saying, okay, I'm flying from Dallas and I have a layover in, I think it was Fort Lauderdale. And Shelby was like, I have a layover in Fort Lauderdale too. And she was coming from up north, and she was like, I board in Fort Lauderdale at this time. I'm like, wait a minute, me too. And so I'm like, oh, this is so cool. We're going to actually fly into Cancun together. And then of course from Cancun, that's how you fly into Cancun to get to Tulum. And so I was just really excited. We met each other at the Fort Lauderdale airport. She's like, you're Sonia, right? We gave each other a hug. We were so excited. It was our first time going to Tulum. We were staying at 2 different hotels. I was at a resort. She was at a different resort. But from the airport, we took a shuttle together, and they dropped me off at my resort, and then they dropped her off at her resort. So it was just really nice getting to that resort. I just felt like it just felt so peaceful. The weather was at the time just really mild. They were doing really well. The workers at that resort, they were doing so well. They were masked up. They had a face shield. All of the restaurant stuff for that resort, everything was outside. So it was, in open air. Of course, it was like a covered area. And so that made things a little bit more safer. But even still, they had us social distancing. So the tables were all spread far apart. The food was amazing. The resort was beautiful. My room was amazing. I just felt like I really needed that vacation and that time away. But for some reason, I don't know how I missed the fact that a storm was coming to the area. So I spent time at the resort, but I don't know if it was my first or second night there. It was storming like crazy out there. I felt like the building, like the building was shaking. It was like the storm was insane. But I didn't feel extremely nervous because I had dealt with a tropical storm when I went on vacation in Jamaica a few years prior. So I remember when I was in Jamaica and a tropical storm was coming, the locals were like, no big deal. We deal with this all the time. I remember the people at the resort when I was in Jamaica, they were just like, can you bring your patio furniture inside of your room because we don't want the patio furniture to blow off of your patio. They were just like, so like, no big deal. We have everything we need at the resort. Like this happens all the time. You're good. So because I kind of dealt with that in Jamaica, I was like, okay, it's a tropical storm, but the people at the resort, they weren't making it like it was a big deal. So, okay, I'm in Tulum, my kind of ocean view, but we're having a tropical storm here. But I'm still feeling optimistic.
2 hours later.
Do y'all hear that wind? I know y'all really can't see the ocean. I can see it better just off camera, but it's pretty violent. Things were looking kind of crazy. Some trees knocked down. It was flooded back there where I was at the resort. I was trying to get in contact with Shelby because Tina was staying in Playa del Carmen. So we thought that Tina was going to be staying in Tulum, but she was just like, you know what? I just think it's better to stay in Playa del Carmen. And so I had been to Playa del Carmen, like I said, like 20 years prior, but of course, you know, I didn't remember a lot about Playa. Tina was like, you know what, ladies, Shelby, Sonia, y'all can come to Playa del Carmen and I'll show y'all around. We'll hang out. And she was like, y'all can stay at my condo. So Tina was already prepared and she was like, I'm moving to Playa del Carmen. So she was staying in a condo and I guess it was going to be like a month of her staying in that condo until she found like permanent housing. I was trying to get in contact with Shelby, but she was having problems with her phone, or just, you know, there's problems with the internet, even like with WhatsApp. I was having problems getting in touch with Shelby. So I was telling Tina, like, I don't want to go to Playa del Carmen and leave Shelby behind. I was just like, as soon as I'm able to get in contact with Shelby, then we'll make our way to Playa del Carmen. It was still a little gloomy out there. I'm just trying to remember because now that was 3 years ago. But at one point during the day, it still was like windy and it just, no one was going to be in the water. It just was not a day to be out there doing anything. So I just took a nap. I listened to some audiobooks. I just chilled around in the room pretty much all day. And then that evening, I don't know, maybe it was around like 4 or 5 p.m. I got a knock at my hotel room and I'm just kind of like, okay, who is this knocking at my door? And it was the front desk worker with Shelby. And he's just like, hey, you have a friend here. I was like, oh my goodness. Like I wasn't able to get in contact with her by phone. And she was just like, hey, I wasn't able to contact you. But she was just like, I figured instead of us being by ourselves, I would come to meet you. And so I told her, Tina invited us to Playa del Carmen if you want to go. And so me and Shelby walked down to the front desk and we were like, hey, can you get us a taxi to Playa del Carmen? And they were like, ooh, I do not know. It's like a lot of trees are down. I don't know if anybody's gonna be able to get you to Playa del Carmen. And so he called a couple of taxi guys and one guy was like, yeah, I'll take you. And so they took us to Playa del Carmen. On our way, just getting out of the resort area, it was like really flooded, but we finally got to the highway. We're on our way to Playa del Carmen to see our other Tulum sister. So she has a condo situation, so we'll probably just spend a night there, but the weather has been crazy. How you feel about the situation?
I'm stressed, Chad. I'm stressed. It's raining, there's trees down there, it's flooding. I mean, everything that could happen has happened.
The wind has been crazy. At my hotel, the electricity went out a few times, so, but we're good because we're gonna all be together. We're gonna go meet. We're gonna have some drinks. We're gonna be at her condo, so it's working out. Yeah, we got to Playa del Carmen.
Oh my goodness. We're in Playa del Carmen now. So those boats are really getting in the wind. But I'll keep y'all updated.
We finally got to Tina's condo, and when we got there, she's like, hey, my electricity has been out all day. And so she was like, let's walk and go get something to eat. When we walked around to go get something to eat, a lot of the restaurants and stuff, their electricity was working. So we went to this Brazilian steakhouse, and Tina, she knows Portuguese and she knows Spanish. So the people who worked at the Brazilian steakhouse, they were Brazilian, so she was speaking Portuguese to them. And so they were impressed. And then they were looking at us like, what y'all have? And me and Shelby were like, we barely know any Spanish. They were like, you need to learn. I'm still even now, trying to learn more Spanish. I don't know, I feel like as you get older, it's like, you absorb things differently, so I need to do a lot better with practicing and learning my Spanish. But the Brazilian steakhouse, that was really, really nice. So we saw two guys after we left the Brazilian steakhouse, and we could tell that they were American. So we were, talking to them, and we're like, hey, where are you from? I don't know if they were from Seattle. I can't remember where they're from, but they were just like, hey, there's this club that we're gonna go to and you guys should come. We're on our way there. And so it was Tequila Barrel. So if anyone's familiar with Playa del Carmen, like that was the spot, Tequila Barrel. So that was my first time going to Tequila Barrel at that time. So we got there before them. We got a table, they were playing good music. They had dancers, like they were really turning up at Tequila Barrel. We were having a good time. Shelby got up on the bar, and they had this competition. If you get up on the bar and dance, that you would get like a free drink or whatever. Shelby got on the bar with the dancers, and man, she did a good job. Like everyone in the place was like, whoa, yes, like she's doing a good job. They're all cheering for her. I mean, she was doing just as well as the ladies who were dancers and worked there. So she came back to the table. I was just like so excited for her. We were having a great time, and it was just a good break away from the US, away from work. It was just a good break. Finally, the guys showed up. They showed up with like 3 other ladies. And so we're just kind of like, oh, should we even, I guess we really shouldn't talk to them because they're with 3 other ladies, and they sat at the table like right behind us. Now they really weren't saying anything. I'm just like, oh, okay, they showed up with those other ladies. But Shelby, she's like, no, I'm gonna go and say something. They invited us here. So Shelby was talking to them, and one of the guys, he was dancing, and you could tell he worked out like every day. So like he took his shirt off and he was dancing. And so then one of the ladies with them, she's just like, put your shirt back on. So I'm like, okay, these are just like their like lady platonic friends. 2 of these girls are their girlfriends or something. Cause you can tell that the one girl was like really like getting a little weird that he took his shirt off. I remember I was telling Tina, I was just kind of like, okay, they invited us here, but then they're here with these ladies. That's not exactly what I said. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I was just kind of like, okay, well, they're here with some other ladies. And the one guy, I don't know how he heard me. He was just kind of like, what'd you say?
What? What did you just say?
I was like, how did he hear me? Like, all this music in here, it's like he really heard what I said. And I just repeated what I said. I was like, oh, I said, and he's like, oh, okay. I don't think he thought that when he's like, what did you say? That I was going to just repeat like, oh, I said so and so and so and so. And so he's just like, oh, and he just went back to his table. It was just crazy. We had a good time though. We danced. And by that time, we had more food. We ate at the Brazilian restaurant, but by that time, we had kind of been out all evening. So by like 11 p.m., we're like, let's get some burgers here at Tequila Barrel. So we got burgers, we got those boxed up, and we walked back to Tina's condo. And we got back there, it was pitch dark by then. And so once we got there, the worker at the condo was like, yeah, the electricity's still out. He's like, I have a flashlight. And so he's like, let me walk first with the flashlight so you guys can walk up to get to the condo. So we followed him, he had a flashlight. And so we're just kind of like, damn, what are we gonna do? We're staying here and it's pitch dark, and we had some bottles of alcohol. The guy was just like, you know what? So you can't even tell if it's frontward or backwards because it's so dark in here.
Use a flashlight.
Your flashlight?
Oh, yes.
No, you're probably about to
I
die.
can't.
It doesn't matter because your audio is what you want, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess. Okay, it is frontward. Yeah, y'all can't see us because the electricity is out. So this is the chronicles of, I guess, Tropical Storm Gamma. But we're together. Y'all can't see us because we're in the dark, but we're gonna eat.
Hey!
The saga continues. I'll keep y'all updated, but we're having a good time. Me and Tina and Shelby, we were just like, okay, we're gonna have drinks pretty much in the dark. We were laughing and having a good time in the dark and having some drink. And the neighbors who were across the way, we like had the patio door open, like they were having a whole party. They had music, was dancing. That's the one thing I like about Playa del Carmen. Everyone just like has a good time. So just the feeling of how much tension and stress was happening in the US, it just felt like such a big difference in Playa del Carmen. Another thing about me being on that trip, my sister knew I was on a trip, and like one of my best friends knew. A lot of people didn't know I was on a trip. My parents didn't know because they would have just been like, are you serious? You're going out of the country by yourself? A lot of people didn't know because there was still a lot of stigma behind traveling. And so I just didn't tell a lot of people I was traveling like that. When we got back to Tulum the next day, it seemed like the weather seemed nice. It was sunny out the next day. And so I'm like, okay, the storm has passed, great. I met another lady by the name of Tina. I'm gonna call her Tina 2. I met her at breakfast. She was another Black American lady who was like, I am moving from the US. So she had 2 big things of luggage with her, and she said that she was in Tulum and she was gonna find an apartment, but for now she was staying at that resort. After breakfast, I was just like, hey, let's go down to the beach. And so we sat on the beach chairs. We had the waiter come and bring us some drinks, and we just talked and got to know each other. She was just such a cool lady, and I was just really enjoying myself. So later on, I went back to my room and I called Shelby and told her, I met this really cool lady here at the resort. We should all go to dinner later. And I had already talked to Tina 2 about it and said that I had a friend, she was staying at a different resort, and I told Tina 2 that we should all go to dinner as well. So Shelby was down with it, and Tina 2 had her rental car. So Shelby got a ride to the resort where we were staying, and then we all drove to the restaurant. We were staying kind of on the outskirts of Tulum. Since I wasn't very familiar with Tulum, I didn't realize I was really staying on the outskirts. It probably took us 15-20 minutes to get to the restaurant that was actually in the heart of Tulum. and we hung out at the restaurant. It was really nice. It was really humid and the mosquitoes really tore me up. I guess after all that rain, the mosquitoes were really having a field day with me. It was a nice restaurant. Mostly everything in Playa del Carmen and Tulum, that whole area, it's like all of the seating areas for the restaurants, they're all like outside. They may have some covering, but they're all outside. So it was really nice out there, just really that jungle vibe because it's in the jungle. Tulum is the jungle. And while we were sitting there and eating, we saw like all these bats up there. So Tina too was just kind of like, did y'all see that? Are those bats? And the waiter came back later. He's just like, yes, you know, you're in the jungle, my friend. Those are bats for sure. So I don't know, I wasn't scared about it because they weren't flying low. They were still flying pretty high. They weren't like getting near our table or anything, but you can definitely see them. We enjoyed our dinner. Shelby and Tina too, they finally got to meet each other and we all talked and we had a good time and just talking about life and just, you know, talking about our plans. I know Shelby wanted to move to the area and Tina too, she was already packed up and she had already moved. She was just looking for her permanent housing. So on our way back to the resort, I was looking at Black in Tulum on Facebook and just seeing the messages, and they were talking about Hurricane Delta and how it was serious. It wasn't going to pass by the area, that they were expecting to get hit by Hurricane Delta, and that it was going to be the worst hurricane they had experienced in like 20 years. And so they were saying that people needed to evacuate. I thought like the tropical storm we got, I thought that that was the end of it, but a big hurricane was on its way. My trip was not over with yet, but I knew that I needed to get online and find a flight. So that night I was able to find a flight through Delta. Ironically, Delta was saving me from Hurricane Delta. And it was very expensive, but I was very grateful that I was able to find a flight to get out of there. So the next morning, I went down to the front desk. I had my luggage and I asked them if they could call a taxi for me. It was weird that once I went downstairs, everyone was just like, okay, we're evacuating the resort. And it was just crazy that they didn't call each room or put a note on the door. It's just like they were evacuating, but they weren't telling the people in each room. I just happened to go down there because I was on my way to the airport. But then I saw Tina too down there. She had both of her suitcases and she said that they were taking them to a hostel. I think there was going to be some type of bus or whatever. They were taking them to a hostel, but the guy at the front desk, he said that he can call me a taxi, and he told me how much it would be. And I looked through my pesos. I didn't have enough pesos to get to the airport, so I was just kind of nervous. I didn't want to miss my flight. So Tina too was just like, how much do you need? Okay, here you go. I have the money that can get you to the airport. And so I was just so thankful that she did that for me. I started to get emotional. I started to cry because I was just wondering what's going to happen with her. She's not going back to the US because she's moving here. So she was on her way to the hostel. She had her luggage with her. So I was concerned about her. And then I also wanted to get back to Dallas. I didn't want any weather related things to keep our flight landed. I thanked her. I told her that I would cash app her the money. I also felt a little bit embarrassed. I don't know why, because I had just met her and I was getting emotional and crying like, oh, thank you for giving me these pesos for me to get to the airport. I don't know. I guess there's probably no reason to feel embarrassed. I was just like it was hard for me to hold back tears, and I had tears just streaming down. I think it was just like symbolic, me feeling like, okay, I just met this person and she's just seems like a wonderful lady. And she was also someone who was at this crossroads in her life of leaving the US and moving to another country. But I think I was emotional because just the whole pandemonium had me emotional. And this was a point in my life, this was a discovery trip for me to figure out, is Tulum the place for me to take the sabbatical, or for me to move away from the US for a year or so? Or I guess there were so many unknowns. I just didn't know where I was going to be the next year. Was I going to be in another country? What job was I going to be at in the future? I guess there was just so much unknowns. It was just overwhelming, emotional. So I was pretty much on my way to the airport to evacuate Hurricane Delta, and everyone was just kind of feeling that tension. Some people in the Black in Tulum group said that they were going to drive up north Mexico and find another state up north for them to go and spend time just out of the path of the hurricane. But I'm going to end the story there. Like I said, I was on my way to the airport to evacuate. Tina too had her luggage and she was on her way to the hostel, and then Shelby was on her way back to the US evacuating as well. So I was in contact with her, making sure that she got on her flight. And then also the first Tina that we met in Playa del Carmen, Tina 1, she was staying as well. She was staying in Playa del Carmen. I was worried about her as well, just making sure that she was okay with the hurricane coming to the area. So we're going to stop it there. I thank you guys for listening to this part 1 of just how the pandemonium changed my life. Get down in the comments. Your comments really help my channel. I thank you guys so much with my last video about the Renaissance disaster. I talked about how I just kept running into all kind of problems on my journey to get to the Renaissance concert. So if you guys haven't watched that, watch that video. But I thank you all who got down in the comments. I just love hearing from you guys. So I thank you all who watched and commented. And then also my short that showed the Renaissance dancers after the show, that was one of my best performing short videos here on YouTube. So I thank you all for watching that. But subscribe to the channel if you aren't subscribed. Share my videos. Ask other people to subscribe if you like my content. I am trying to get to 100,000 subscribers one day. So again, I thank you all. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to be notified every time I post a video, share, and I will talk to you all soon in part 2. Bye-bye.